Welcome to Season 3 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country who are joined by a surprise guest each episode. We're glad you're here. We hope you enjoy the ride. This is RecLess.
Welcome to the 50th episode of RecLess. Yes, 50th. That is quite a number to be proud of. This podcast is here to focus on the industry of park and recreation through three close friends from different parts of the country. My name is Jay Tryon. I'll be your host today. And as always, I have Shane Mize and Tom Venniro. What is going on, guys? We are here live in Atlanta.
We are. It's number 50. Jay played with the schedule a little bit, so he had the 50th guest. We
had a hurricane.
It's all part of his master plan. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a good time.
Atlanta's been good so far. I've already had some good food and exciting to start to see people. So should be good.
It's fun, man. It's definitely special to be able to do this in person and also to, be proud of saying this is number 50. So obviously we don't get to do this in person very often. The last time the three of us were in person was last year in conference in Dallas. And I wish we could do this more often in person. We don't get together too many times. So as usual, I have a question for the group. And, it's a little bit different. Sometimes I have work-related questions. Sometimes it might be personal. But, this one is to really emphasize the fact that we're here together in person. We've known each other now for 10, 15 years. We don't see each other more than usually once a month or once a year, maybe sometimes twice, depending on committees and other state conferences. So my question for you today is, when you think about the three of us coming together and being together in person, is there one memory that sticks out, good or bad, that you think of when you think about getting together as a group?
There's one.
I got one. There's one moment that, for whatever reason, will always be the first. I think it made us closer, but It was we talk about, and what was it, the season 2 recap episode with Katie Keller, and we talked about who's a diva and who's a what and who's this. And hey, you know what? I'm not going to admit to being one or the other of those, but I can admit that I have my moments.
You admit to being both?
Everybody has their moments, and we were walking from, I believe it was Baltimore, I think, and we were
in Baltimore,
Camden Yards, so we were one of my favorite places to go, and we had a social there, and I believe we were leaving, we were on our way there, and there might have been a pregame involved into that.
We were pregaming a little.
Yes, and I don't know, Hannah wasn't.
We had gotten close enough as us three that y'all knew Hannah really well.
Yes, and exactly, that was the crux of this whole.
It's her fault.
Hannah wasn't there, so it is definitely her fault. Yeah. She was on the phone, and Jay and Hannah were just bantering about something, and I said, "Man, why you gotta pin her against me like it was some kind of big deal, right?" And I remember saying, "You know what? That kind of got me. It kind of irked me a little bit. I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna go have some fun." And then basically the rest of the night, I ghosted the two of you.
That's right.
Ghosted might be an understatement.
Yeah.
Typically, a ghosting is like just don't respond to a text, but
ghosts actually haunt you. You did the opposite. You unhunted.
I did. And the next morning, that evening, you guys tried to track me down.
I tried
You tried to get up into my room.
Yeah.
The
unsuccessful.
Did not tell me what room you were in.
Yes.
I knew your name, and they were like, "I cannot."
We were like Romeo and Juliet. We were just throwing rocks to every window.
I gave him a picture of you
Thomas, we're out there.
Don't let these two people. Don't let them up. And so I mean, the next morning it was fine. It took me a while. I don't even remember like the whole why. I was upset
in the moment.
I was upset in the moment. I thought it would be fun to teach a lesson, but that was kind of a silly thing to do. But I guess it was fun in the moment.
Yeah.
We became stronger.
That's definitely the one I thought of too. But if I have my own answer, when we started this podcast, I reached out. So I'd watched, and y'all kind of know the genesis, whoever's listened, but I'd listened to SmartLess for a couple years because it happened during the pandemic and I enjoyed it. But I don't think the whole time I listened to SmartLess, I thought of us, like our relationship, but I watched the 6-series documentary that HBO did on Smartless on the road, where they followed those 3 actors around and their relationship, their interactions, how they interacted. I was just like, man, this reminds me of us. And not any one person in particular, but yeah, no, Sean Hayes for sure. For Tom, no, I'm just kidding. Not any one person in particular, just their aspects of their relationship that reminded me of our relationship. And I quickly had the idea that we should do a podcast with a similar banter. And, ultimately 50 episodes ago, it led to this. And I called y'all. Actually, because I knew y'all, I reached out to y'all and said, hey, I got an idea, but I put you on red a little bit. I was trying to see if I even thought that would be something y'all would be interested in.
It was a 2-week. You gave us a 2-week teaser.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. He said, "I got an idea. I want to."
I got an idea.
I can't talk about it now.
I got a really good idea. I don't know if you'll like it or not, but I want to. But I kind of wanted to be able to explain it holistically instead of. We communicate a lot through text, and I don't even think we do it very well. I think we just do it by default. So messages sometimes get missed or dropped, or we have a lot of messages going, or tone isn't always heard. And so I was like, I think this could be really cool. I want to be able to say it. So we took a time on like a Sunday or something that we all hopped on. Hannah was in the car with me. We were driving around hill country. We pulled off on the side of the road and Zoomed y'all and asked y'all if you wanted to do this stupid podcast. And it's been a lot of fun.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
It is.
One thing that comes to mind for me, and it's funny because Shane just mentioned, we've been here, or Tom mentioned it, we're here, we had some good food. Typically when we get together at these conferences, we're always trying to get some good food at local places that we can't get to. And one of the most fond memories of that to me is New Orleans. And I don't know if you remember what I'm going to even say.
The 6-mile walk for biscuits.
So we were going out for breakfast.
We passed 50 breakfast places.
We just talked about this when you were in the car, 10 minutes ago.
But we found a breakfast place that had rave reviews. We were determined to go there, and it happened to be maybe a mile.
Wasn't a mile.
Wasn't that far. But
the Olympians are still talking about the route that we took.
Shane's not a big walker, so for the entire time of that walk, I think there was a lot of cuss words that were said and just frustration. But it was all worth it because that food was really good that day.
We passed 50 breakfast places.
And they weren't nearly as good as the one we ate at.
I just want to point out they were still biscuits.
I wish I remembered the name. Melissa and I went back there. Yeah, on the weekend.
You couldn't find it?
No,
you would have had to walk to find it.
Melissa ended up buying one of those. You remember it had artwork hung up on the wall. So you can buy it.
It was tiny. It was a little house.
Yeah.
That was good.
You had to wait outside.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, all good stuff.
Well, we have a guest out in the lobby waiting. So let's jump into our normal, some hints. I've kind of already pre-show given a few things that may have pointed to the fact that you guys may or may not know this guest, but obviously the person is here in person, which is
and
fun.
They know us.
And they do know you guys.
Correct.
So for what it's worth, that's where we're at. The guest has worked in the industry for over 20 years in a variety of roles, starting as an intramural umpire and official.
Really?
They have served within their agency for over 17 years. So same agency for a very long time. They have served in a variety of roles in their state association, including chair. They're very active in their state. They've served on Kapler visits.
Okay.
They're presenting this week at conference, and this one's for you, Shane. The title of their session is called The P Word.
Oh, really?
I know we have a lot of jokes about Pflugerville and the P, and I'm like, you know what? Shane,
the P word.
Go to that
Okay.
So it's the P Word. They have recently presented a virtual session for NRPA that was titled Release Your Niche, Career Success in Parks and Recreation. They are in a state that I value very heavily from our industry because I feel like every year at conference with gold medals and CAPRA accreditation agencies, there's a lot of winners from this state.
Is this our 16th guest from Illinois?
No, they are in the state of Colorado.
Okay, another good state. All right.
So I have a lot of departments in Colorado that I follow closely that I really look up to.
Are they from Apex?
They're not from Apex. Close to Apex, I believe.
I was going to say, I wonder if it was
Friends
Hillary.
with that group of folks that we know in Apex.
Because Hillary presented. I didn't know what she presented on.
No?
Another coffee.
Okay. So I don't think you have a hint. Today's guest is the recreation manager for the town of Parker, Colorado. Anything ring a bell from Parker? No? Okay.
I've heard of Parker.
Welcome, Errin Koon.
Oh.
Okay.
All
right, Errin.
Well, Errin, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I gave them several facts and they did not guess. They did not know who it was. One of the key facts I gave was you are presenting a session this week called the P word.
That's
P
right.
word.
And I'm very intrigued by that session. I have it flagged in my app. And I want to know how that has come across and what has got you to, speak on that topic and what is that going to be all about?
So the P word came up because I've done a number of CAPRA visits now. And as a visitor, one of the things we consistently give is feedback on the documents that they're using and the usage, like how relevant is it actually to your agency? So I found myself and my teams giving very similar feedback over and over again about how to write them, what should be included in them, and then how to show you're actually using those documents. So that's really where it came from was, hey, this seems like it's a common topic, and the review teams I've sat on all have very similar feedback for the agencies. So I thought, might as well give it a shot.
What's the profile of Parker, Colorado? What's that look like?
So Parker is South Denver. It is a pretty affluent community. I think the median income is low 100,000s, 80,000s.
Okay.
About 66,000 in the city. We serve about 120,000 in the area.
What's the park system like?
We have I was just on our parks page. About huge parks, a lot of trails. I don't have the exact specifics from them, but
Rec centers,
two
aquatic
rec
facilities.
Center. So our original rec center has lap pool. It's got like where our swim meets are and stuff, and then we've got the activity pool. That's our main fitness center, and then we have the Parker Fieldhouse, which is where I've been like my entire career, and that's a big open sport venues like turf and inline rink, 2 full-size basketball courts, and then we have an outdoor pool and an outdoor ice ribbon, which is something unique.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like us in DC have ribbons. So it's a ribbon in the winter, and then in the summer that the boards come down and it's a sidewalk and a little plaza for bands.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
area.
Is there a fee to skate in the winter?
Yes.
Okay.
4-packs, rentals now. But in the summer, it's just open. And they do a concert series. Our cultural department does a concert series out there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned, Parker, that you've been in there for a little over 17 years.
Yes.
How's that transition been? Because you've been in like a lot of different roles and obviously you've been promoted over and over. But is there a position that, you look back and you're like, man, that really helped me get to where I am, or a position that like you just really enjoyed and that was the pivotal point of just like, I'm going to stick with Parker for a long time because of the, the growth that you've seen?
Yeah, I started as an assistant facility coordinator, and that was when the Fieldhouse was just opening. So I got to help open that building and really started there from the ground up. I went over to sports about 3 years later, but I think where facility helped me really understand both sides. And I grew up in Idaho. So in Idaho, there is no programs, facilities, you do it all. They're just not a huge system yet. And they've got beautiful outdoors and everything to use, but they just don't have that split like we do in Colorado. So I had applied and was about to take a promotion as a facility coordinator. And my bosses really talked to me and said, you don't really seem like, basically she said, do you want to be fixing boilers for the rest of your career? And I said, nope, not even a little bit. They said, yeah, we think you like programs a lot better. So then that sport position opened. And I think it's a pivotal moment in my career because somebody took the time to say like, we'll give you this promotion if you want it, but I don't think that it's what you actually want. And put it into terms that I was at the age I needed to hear that. And then I kind of took off in programs, and I did most of my career through sports, but oversee all our programs now. I think they each have a benefit, and I think there's a lot of value to staying in a position for a time. We kind of see a trend now where people move quickly from job to job or promote to promote, and I think each of them serve a point that you need to learn a piece of what that particular position has. And it's tough to go from managing programs and things and schedules to managing people because there's not a lot of people training. That's something that this year the town has really been good about bringing in as a leadership specialist. And I've done 8 days of training this year on leadership alone, and it's been fantastic. Yeah, it's intense training, but it's like he's like, we don't train people to manage people. We train you to put together a schedule. We train you to,
Yeah.
you know, all these other random technical pieces. So that's really helped. You know, I don't think any career 17 years like that comes just easy. You know, there have been ups and downs, but the town has been really good to their employees, and I think they really have a dedication to trying to improve where they can and help you through what they can. So.
That sounds great. I want to actually talk a little bit about, you mentioned the program side, but youth sports or sports specifically. We don't talk, I don't believe, enough about, you know, you asked a question earlier, Shane, about what's your park system like? You know, we ask those questions, but we don't talk a ton about people's recreation programs. And yeah, I don't think we do enough. It's weird, right?
No.
So particularly, I wanted to talk about sports, and I'm going to start with your background. Very interesting fact that Jay shared with me, that Jay and I connect with, and now we connect with. I was an umpire for years, and to a pretty competitive level when I stopped. I stopped only about 7 or 8 years ago. American Legion and Babe Ruth, Monroe County Babe Ruth was just traveling, travel ball and that kind of thing. That got a lot more challenging as the years went by. And the reason I stopped was because we were going to have a family, we were going to have kids. I loved the game. I wanted to stay around the field. I missed the field. Mm-hmm. That said, the part you mentioned about people, you can teach me how to umpire a baseball game, every skill, what a balk is, the infield fly rule. Great, I could be the most technical umpire there is, but coaches and now kids, right? The youth have a chip or attitudes because they might see it from their parents or from a coach. Yeah. So that's what we've noticed even on a rec level. So now transitioning to the rec level, you started as maybe a ref or an umpire, and now your organization, I assume, runs sports leagues. Yeah. What are the challenges that have come along? What are some changes you've seen over time, and how are you managing the people in the youth sports landscape?
Man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, there was at least 5 questions in there.
You don't think you'll get a chance to talk to you.
That's fair. I can let you ask as many questions as you'd like. Yes, no. I've done about 11 years in sports, I think, 11, 12-ish, where I was right overseeing soccer. There's a lot of, I think the biggest changes in the climate and the temperature of parent spectators. And, I talked to a ref at a session and they were talking about, it used to just be that the coach would yell at you and you would get it from the coach. And now it's like the coach and the parents yell and then the kids see it. So now they're getting flack from everybody on the field, from the kids to the coaches to the spectators, and they just don't get a break. So what we're seeing is a lack of officials. I mean, nationwide, we've got a shortage. So I've seen a lot of different ways manage that. Like people will do silent Saturdays or they won't allow parents. We've seen some of those games happen. We've had to rely heavily on parents to officiate. And one of the things it's causing is like, I do rec because it's fun, it's safe, and it's educational. And when you lose referees who know what they're doing, you lose almost all three of those things. Sure. I just started coaching my 8-year-old. 6 to 8 soccer is a whole trip, but there's, they don't allow sliding in that age. They don't allow heading. There's a lot of things that these officials don't know. And especially if they're volunteering just as a parent, they have no idea you can't head the ball at ages 6 to 8.
They can do COVID up to a certain age.
Yeah.
It's just about getting people out there and getting people active.
Yeah. And that's really the reason I do rec, is I want people out there playing. They need to learn how to play and enjoy a team sport, an individual sport, or just whatever their niche is. And it's really hard to do when you can't teach them that safely or the right skills, because then they advance up with incorrect understanding of the rules. So we're working on trying to get some cheat sheets out for volunteer parents, really, really trying to beef up our hiring. We were lucky to do a comp study that gave our part-time employees pretty good raises this last year. But it's still a struggle, and you just have to hope you get good volunteers and work with them through the rules. I'm not sure I've seen an agency do it great yet. It's a kind of a newer trend, sort of like the lifeguard trend, shortage of lifeguards. We don't see the same kind of financial assistance that lifeguarding got. So it's tough.
It is. In the rec sport environment is so different than the travel sport. But because the travel sport environment has kind of grown, it used to be very exclusive. Mm-hmm. There might be one travel team per community, and now there's multiple travel teams. So now you get a little bit watered down. And we see, at least, just want to ask a question about the parents now, not the coaches, not the ones that volunteer, but we're seeing at a parental level that they're not afraid to say, well, we're not going to play if we can't play on a team with all of my kids' friends. That's happening a lot. We're also seeing that if they don't like the rules that we implement to make it a more fun and safe atmosphere, they're saying, oh, well, this isn't real baseball, so we don't want to play, or we want to change the rules. And I mean, it's causing a lot of problems. The parents are very outspoken. Do you have anything that you're teaching your team? You said like leading or managing people. What are you teaching your team when they're interacting with the parents?
So one of my taglines, I guess, I said, don't you make rules to the rule, not the exception. You make policy to the rule, not the exception. So we try to go fundamentally what is going to be best for the entire league. You will never make them all happy. So what will be the best solution, whether it be about a rule, about a schedule, about a reschedule, about makeups, any of that. It's what's going to serve the league the best, not individual A, B, or C. And then that they tend to get, we have, I think, 11,000 kids we see through the year in our various sports, and they're probably getting 100 calls a year that are really, really negative, if that. So that's a really low percentage, and I'd have to try to remind them of a few things. One, not to take it super personal, which is very difficult, particularly as a young coordinator, because you put your heart and your soul into a league, and then people are mad, and they're usually the only ones who like to be very loud. So trying to remind them that there are about 1,199 other families in this league, and they're not complaining. You're doing okay.
Yeah.
And then getting them to buy in. So I think I see it even more at the coordinator level. Referees deal with it on site, so they just don't have them. Referees aren't coming. But the coordinators then have to deal with it. And they have to deal with the complaints about the lack of referees. They have to deal with the complaints about field conditions, weather, all of it. And so it's a very difficult thing to say, don't take it personal. And it takes a few years, I would say, to learn, like, this is not about you. You are doing the best you can. Take some grit, I think, to get through it.
Yeah, I don't think we talk a lot about youth sports, and I think we could go on and on about all these different challenges, because I've even heard large municipalities in Virginia that had to cancel basketball seasons because there wasn't enough referees. And it's one of the most foundational and popular programs that agency has always had, but they had to cancel that. And then you mentioned travel sports, and the travel sports are growing, and all these different competition levels keep getting higher and higher, where there's this high expectation that the parents have of, like, my kid's the next LeBron James or the next
Tom Brady.
We'll put it out there. And the reality is, obviously, the parents don't look at it in the reality of, hey, there's one kid out of 5,000 that's going to go pro. And that's what we almost somehow need to figure out a way to do that in a nice way, because obviously,
Tony's conversation last week, Tony Lopez talked about the sports management. They're going and they want to be a GM. Well, there's 32 Major League Baseball teams, right? There's 32 NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting you mentioned Tom Brady, which is not the first time we've mentioned him on this episode.
Not we, not Tom.
But we mentioned Tom Brady. The funny thing about Tom Brady is Tom Brady will go down as the greatest quarterback of all time.
But when did he start playing football?
Well, in the NFL.
Right.
He's a multi-sport athlete.
But he'll barely be in the Ring of Honor at Michigan. I mean, he was there 3 or 4 years and started a year and a half, got beat out by Henson at one point. If you judge Tom Brady specifically on what he did at Michigan, he would be an above average quarterback for the University of Michigan standards, for sure. And so even at that level, there has to be, when you talked about grit or adversity, like we've robbed our youth of the opportunity to, even if it's not fair, even if they are the better athlete, even if the coach isn't seeing the value they bring to the team that the other kid that's starting above them is bringing to the team, we're robbing our youth of the opportunity to go through adversity and overcome it by the helicopter parent concept that happens in parenting today, where if my kid doesn't start, I'll start another travel team and we'll start from scratch. We'll build it around that person, or we'll specialize instead of the 3 sports, which is very interesting.
Well, and that's the other side. The other thing of that you just said is parents now feel their requirement to put their child in that sport year round. And if they don't, they're way behind. And the problem with that is, and I'll use my son, for example, Noah's 11. He's played football now for the last 3-4 years. He played baseball for several years. He hasn't played baseball on an actual organized team in probably 3 years. But if he were to try to play this year, he'd be very behind.
Yeah.
Because all of his friends that play baseball, they travel from spring till winter. And it just puts everyone else at a disadvantage if you don't play a season.
It's not even the skill. Noah might be very skilled. He might jump right in after 2 practices. He's behind in the social
the network.
hierarchy, the network, right? Of the parents and the coaches. And we go through that. We have these camps. Everybody has, you got your sports season, and some organizations, some rec departments run camps through the school. We have them. And our school coaches are the ones who oversee them, and they kind of advertise it, but they don't publicly say it, but they're kind of saying it to the people behind the scenes. You have to come to this camp.
Yes.
If you're part of this program, right? And
and then pay, I think, it's an insane amount of money. And it's probably the most detrimental thing you can do to a kid is to pigeonhole them in a sport way too young. I think it was Jay Cutler and Greg Olson were talking about that on that they're not just specializing sports, but they're seeing kids specialize in position.
Oh yeah.
Defensive or just offensive. And if you look at the collegiate athletes who have been the most successful, they're all multi-sport athletes. I think Tom Brady was baseball remember his third.
Yeah.
Baseball, football.
I know he played baseball and football. He probably played basketball.
Track, tennis, maybe. I had looked it up.
And Sporty did not say he ran track.
Well, I love seeing.
I don't think he did.
There's a lot of pro athletes that will speak out for that, and they'll say no, you should play multiple sports.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most famous to this day will always be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't plan on playing professional basketball.
High school team is softball.
Exactly. He loved baseball. Baseball was his passion. Same reason why he retired from basketball to try to play baseball. Didn't obviously go as well as he planned, but then it's he still had that passion for it and could do multiple sports.
Well, and you mentioned your son might be getting into baseball too late if he waits much longer. We had a conversation, Tom and I. Tom plays hockey, and you got into it late.
Yep.
And you got into it late enough that it definitely stunted your ability to go pursue it at a college level, which is crazy because everything we're doing right now is only about some kids being able to pursue it at a college level.
Right.
Your son is maybe too old to get into baseball right now and pursue it at a college level, but as a lifelong activity,
sure.
Stickball, John Stutzman plays stickball, Michael Biedenstein plays stickball. Getting into it at 19, 20, 21, you could play it for the next 30 years. So when we do rec, a lot of what is being cannibalized by the youth sports is the pursuit of this college scholarship, which is going to lead to millions in their professional sport. And it's not just about staying healthy, socializing, enjoying your community, your space, finding some lifelong activity that you can do that keeps you healthy for the next 30 or 40 years, which is insane because when you go back and look at the European gymnasiums and all these sports that used to be what the genesis of what all these sports came from competition-wise in the European areas, it was just something to keep you active. It was just to keep you busy. It's become this pursuit of athletic excellence, but only in this small 18 to 22.
Who's the exception?
And it's just,
they're the exception.
It's been like that for the last 10 years, but it wasn't like that before.
No.
And a fun fact that I'll share, and you probably don't even know this, one of the few things you probably don't know about me, I did not run track and field in high school, but I ran it in college. I just randomly decided, I met some friends my freshman year, I was planning on playing baseball and didn't make the baseball team. And then they were like, come try out for track. And I ran track in college. You couldn't do that now. I mean, you could do that now, but kids wouldn't do that now because they're always determined of I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to do this. And their parents are pushing them to do it. And it's you can't just let the kids be kids sometimes. And it's really sad.
Yeah, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox because we can probably we need to talk to Errin more, but I will say it's a good conversation. We don't talk about enough, but the Brady example is a good example. He's gone on record and saying he didn't start playing competitive tackle football until he was 16. You know what I mean? He was in high school. So that's a whole nother part of this. What we do, and I'm preaching to the choir here, we do rec sports leagues that are 6, 10, 12 weeks, right? And then you just get off it once or twice a week. You get off and move to the next sport. The other side of it, and I'm going to use, and people probably aren't going to be a fan of this, I'm going to use tackle football as an example. But I mean, tell me the benefit. Tell me the benefits of a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old playing tackle football. And I would tell you, and my response is that what Shane might have looked like as an 8-year-old is going to be a lot different than when you look like at a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old. To Jay's point, some of these people, we all mature at different levels. And yeah, you're going to probably see people who jump on a football team in college who never played before because physically their maturity hadn't caught up to them yet.
Well, and you're seeing a spike in flag football for that reason.
Absolutely.
Most rec agencies I know are not offering tackle. Yeah. It's expensive to offer. Yep. It's expensive to play, and it's just too dangerous. Yeah.
And it'll be in the Olympics soon. The girls' youth flag football movement is huge everywhere.
So, what do we do in rec to highlight and glorify rec as an option?
So we did a campaign. I think NRPA helped with a Play Sports campaign for a while. We shared some of their posts, and we kind of highlighted some of those professional multi-sport athletes. And then when we recruit, but if I've got parents I'm talking to, we explain, like, we don't do team registration. We do first come, first serve. Assessments are really the best way to get your teams even, but we have a huge league, so it's really hard to do that. So you get on at 10 a.m., pick the team you want, whether it's the coach you want, the time you want, the field you want, whatever, and try to balance it that way. And then when we see the kids or teams that are too good, we start pushing them to our Parker Hawks is kind of that next level. And they have travel ball, but they have a rec league as well. Travel competitive clubs, rec divisions are still far more competitive than our rec league. So I kind of guide our parents through that, but I've also strategically tried to work with the Hawks to say, okay, we want your beginner kids, the kids who've never played, never touched a sport, help us with kinder lacrosse. So they're these cute little kids with bobblehead helmets, and they've got a tennis ball and a little lacrosse stick, and they just play 1 hour a day or a week. And then we push them toward Hawks or toward another agency like that that's still a reasonable cost. But we just tell them from the onset, like, we cannot serve competitive sports. It's not who we are. It's not what we do. We want to create the lifelong athlete. That's our goal. And it's to give you an introduction to all those different sports. So it's highlighting that. It's tough because you're up against, like, the club level coaches saying, no, you have to do this, you have to do this, you can't play others. And then you have college level coaches who are like, we want the athletes who have played multiple sports.
Right.
How those two agencies and industries aren't speaking is beyond me. I've just tried to hit it from my end. Okay, I can filter kids to competitive. That's the ideal goal, is that we're getting kids to love a sport enough to be good enough at it to pursue it further. Or if they just want to be a casual athlete, we've got all the different sports they can play. It's I think it's just a lot of educating parents, and then they have to be willing to hear it.
I don't know if this thing's still around. Have you ever heard of Upward? Like Upward Basketball League? Maybe it was just a Texas thing, but it was a faith-based group.
I have, yes. Now that you say that, yeah.
And when they came on, about the time I was running league, so I was younger in my career, it was very recreational in nature. But what I thought was cool is the experience was high level. So you had dry ice. They announced every kid.
Yeah.
So, they came out and they got their name announced, and they came through as the team came through the dry ice, and, you would run and dap up the opponent, and it was kind of like in the middle of the gym. And for the 30 minutes or 45 minutes those kids were performing, experiencing play, learning adversity, they felt like they were NBA, players. And I can't even remember if they kept score, if they didn't do playoffs. I know it was very rec based, but I remember thinking that's the pathway. That's an idea. Like that.
Yeah.
Don't make the adults feel like these kids are NBA players. Make the kids feel like they're NBA players, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Mm-hmm. We would do every once in a while or one time a season, and we kind of got away from it because technology changed and everything like that. But we would videotape a game and do announcements, and then so I'm sure a lot of groups do that still. And then for this, we have a Pee Wee flag. A lot of people have Pee Wee programs, right? So Pee Wee flag football. It's just once a week for 4 weeks. My son's in it right now. It's his first taste of any kind of sports, and it's it's hilarious to watch them. Mm-hmm. He gets more of a joy out of doing like the ladder, the agility ladder, but he doesn't know. He's just jumping in little squares, little boxes. And then we do the flag thing. He just thinks it's hilarious to chase me with flags on, right? So he doesn't know any different, and then if he can't have his lemonade, he has a meltdown. So that's all he cares about, right? But there's this kind of allure to talking to him every day and say, hey, it's football night. We're going to play football. He's like, and at the beginning of the day, he's so excited. And by the time I pick him up, he's like, are we going to football? And I was like, not yet, but he's ready in 3 weeks. Ryan Rockefeller, who's here, our assistant director, he had the idea. He goes, "Can we get on the lighted football field for the final class and do
awesome.
Tuesday? It's Tuesdays, not Fridays, but Tuesday night lights." And so we're going to do that on October 22nd. These kids are going to feel like they're going to get their jerseys. They're going to be under the lights. We're excited about that.
I love that.
I think the city of Aurora in Colorado does that. We don't have any lighted multi-purpose fields yet, but they do the same thing with their baseball fields. They have a local baseball park that's fantastic, baseball softball complex, and so they try to get them worked up to that field as well, and it gives them something to look forward to, like you said. Yeah, my son, his flag football experience was taking the aeration plugs and trying to put them back in the holes for about an hour straight.
His version of picking wallflowers in the outfield.
Yeah, that's definitely a
Puzzle
like
pieces.
on the outfield for t-ball.
That's awesome.
I love that. I wanted to go back on something. You manage facilities, and Colorado is a very active, well known as a very active state, right?
Yes.
The people that are in it are healthy and they're active. And I was wondering, or I used to wonder, and I definitely want to get your perspective on it. And I'll provide a little context. VRS is a architect firm that builds rec centers, and we went to one of their camps, one of their a couple days where they give a tour.
The rec camp,
rec camp. And they had done some research with the University of North Texas, which I think we all knew innately, but it put it in science. It was basically saying a rec center is the best thing for a privatized rec environment. So a rec center comes in, it doesn't actually compete with Gold's Gym. It doesn't run people out of the swim lessons program. It doesn't run someone out of the tennis community. It enriches it.
Right.
Because what it does is it takes more people who were never going to go to those places to begin with, because those are so specialized, and it gets them healthier to the point that they think, oh, maybe I could go play tennis. And so then they join. And so the research that BRS and University of North Texas did shows that a rec facility doesn't compete with the private sector. It actually makes it better. So in that same context, I would think it's very tough to get someone from Colorado to come in and run on a treadmill like you would in Texas, because Colorado got beautiful trails and things. But does having a healthier base just mean more people use your facility? Is that kind of how that works out?
I think so. I think we see a lot of, we're trying to put together more outdoor fitness programs for the people who want to work outdoors.
Sure.
But Colorado also sees extreme heats and extreme cold. So there is a good market for the need for indoor facilities.
Yeah.
We see a lot of competition for the drop-in basketball space, the drop-in fitness space, and the people who just want to use it. And we're outgrowing our facilities as well. I mean, the town of Parker is growing like crazy, and so is Colorado. So we're hitting capacity on a lot of different opportunities. So it's like the opposite. There's just so much you can do though out in Colorado. I think traffic out to the mountains, that's my deterrent. I love hiking. I love being outside, but I'm on the opposite side of the city to the mountains, and I'm like, I am not driving across Denver right now to go out there and fight that. So I think there's some level of convenience, which is with the levels of service standards, right? You want a rec center within X amount of miles, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with parks and fields, trails, that it's just going to help create an overall community and healthy community. So
a healthier, more active community isn't less prone to use a rec center. They may be just as prone. They're just also going to use the outdoor spaces.
Yes.
So when they're not using the outdoor spaces, they're very likely to use the indoor spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I want to pose a question for Colorado in general, because you were just talking about that. And during the introduction, I mentioned I have a lot of departments that I follow closely with Colorado, just because I've always seen such good things. There's always awards every year at conference, whether it's gold medal, more accredited programs and departments. For Parker, obviously have both. You've been nationally recognized in a variety of different areas. Are there things that are there from the culture that keeps it so? It keeps the expectations high for staff, but also meeting those expectations for the community, since there is such a demand?
I think in Parker specifically, we've always had really high expectations, and I think we came by that naturally.
Parker's not the P word, though.
That is not the P word, actually, at all. That's funny. I should throw it in there.
There you go.
I'll think about tweaking this Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll just talk about Parker. People will be real surprised. No, it's
And then in Pflugerville, they're even more surprised.
There you go. Yeah, because it doesn't even sound like it starts with the P.
That's right. What the first director I had really ran us like a business, and so we had our real budgets were tight for expenses and make. so we've always kind of had this push to provide really quality services. I look at revenue generation differently than just like charge more, make more.
Yeah.
I look at it, get more kids in, more participation, more quality. It's going to naturally increase, right? So it's just, I think we've got a lot of people who push that expectation, whether it's financial or it's quality service and across the board. So that's Parker specifically. I think we do hold ourselves to a really high level of expectations. Colorado as a whole, I think a big piece, it's like what comes first, the community, the mountains, and the people who want to recreate, or the services we provide. And so I'm not sure where it started, but we just have a really great set of programs, of agencies. Our network in Colorado is huge. You know, we're here with, I think, our Ashley said we had 140 from Colorado last year. I'm not sure what the number is this year. And so we have a really, really good network. And that is huge for so many things. I think we preach it, you hear it in every session. Network, socialize, whatever, but it really does matter when things are impacting your agency that you need help with. And you need help from people who kind of understand the local climate and the local culture to be able to say, like, okay, we can't get lifeguards, we can't get officials, we can't get this. Well, okay, are you asking them to work in 110-degree heat in summer? You know, like there's just different things that different agencies see.
Sure.
Or having the network in Arizona, you know, we had a couple of days in the summer that tipped into heat index that we're not used to experiencing. So I said, let's reach out to some of our colleagues in Arizona who deal with this regularly.
Right.
We don't have a heat index policy for sports. And you know, it came up this year. I was like, well, I know Becky from, I don't remember she's at now in Arizona, but she was in Colorado first. So it's easy to go back and say, okay, what do you guys do? But I don't even remember what you started the question with.
I've always really, partly, yes. I've always looked up to a lot of Colorado agencies, and yours is one of them, Parker and Erie and Apex, and, you know, the department that Ryan Hennigress used to be with.
Yeah, Westminster.
Yes.
There's just a lot of
South Suburban.
Yeah.
There's always been a lot of national accolades that have come out of Colorado, and maybe they push each other. Maybe, you know, if you have a surrounding municipality that, like, you know, Parker's doing XYZ, it's like this town feels like they have to do that or better, or try to push the envelope more.
Yeah, I think it probably also, I remember I was on the program committee for Houston when it came to Houston, and at one point they were looking at Richard Loeb, the guy that wrote The Last Child in the Woods. I don't know how to say his last name. Ends with a V, so I'll never be able to say it. But it's one of those names that I'm like, Richard, hard name. Anyways, he wrote Last Child in the Woods, was a great book for us in our industry at one time. And there were some people concerned about bringing him in. Ultimately, they didn't bring him in, partly because he's not a great speaker. He's a better writer, one, for sure. But two, in Texas, conservation's looked at differently, right? We in general conserve spaces that we hunt on, right? That we have land that we farm and till or whatever. And so I think sometimes how people interact with their outdoor spaces is very localized, right? And Colorado's got this incredible playground where it's got mountains and rivers and great climate. And so, yeah, you're a more active community because of where you live. And also people that want that active lifestyle that may live in Arizona or Texas, then move to Colorado. Correct. So it's a great recruitment tool. And so it's one of those things that it's like the chicken and the egg, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what came first, you know, it's really working now. And so, you know, and then I think y'all do some great things with some of your government funding.
Yes.
With
GoCo funds.
Yeah. And so when we toured, there's rec centers in Colorado. There's towns that are like 10 or 12,000 people that in Texas would barely even have a Parks and Rec department. And it's got the best rec center you'd ever see in Texas in this 12 or 15,000 population town. And that's due to funding. That's due to their expectation. Yeah. And so I think it's just a really rich community with a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah. That floored me when I went out for my interview 17 years ago, coming from Idaho, where we have a beautiful outdoor playground in Idaho, right? But indoor facilities just weren't really a thing. We had YMCAs. And I remember going to the rec center, which was built in the 80s, so relatively outdated at that point. And we did a future expansion, but I remember walking in and being like, this place is fantastic. It's magnificent. It was huge. And then to see the Fieldhouse that was being built, that's really what drew me to the job originally. I was like, this is my dream job. I want to be somewhere where I could do sports, I can run programs. And I think there is a lot of draw there. that rec feel, the outdoorsy feel, brings a lot of people. It also creates some challenges. You know, I remember being on CPRA board and them talking to Colorado Parks and Wildlife about having to campaign to teach people how to treat the outdoors.
Mhm.
How do you treat the trails? How do you pack it in, pack it out? How do you not attack wildlife or scare them or be attacked by them, right? Because you get all these people from cities, big states that don't really have the same type of wilderness, and they just don't know. So it's kind of a unique.
Well, and the other side of
challenge.
that is the elevation change.
Oh,
Like, if
yeah.
someone goes to visit Colorado,
Yeah.
I've been there. I went to my wife and I took a trip to Denver and did some other traveling in the state, and it hits you very different.
Mhm.
You know, you're going hiking and you think you can hike like you might in your state,
Yeah.
but
A
you're
lower elevation.
a lot higher in elevation, and you might be short of breath, and you might get just feeling very woozy that like you're not used to that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's issues that park rangers and staff have to deal with that, like an outsider's not used to that.
Mhm. Most people who live there now will try to help their friends. That's what I've seen. If you
Yeah.
bring a friend from sea level, they'll be like, let's make sure you're here a couple days before you take a hike or get you acclimated. But the teams that come play, they really just try to throw it in their face that you're at a higher elevation.
Yeah. for
Love
sure.
going to Broncos games. They pump the oxygen noise at them, and they
Well,
highlight that
it's all
elevation all
over-
day.
Yeah,
Great.
anytime you watch a game,
Yep.
it's all they say, right? Does that have any impact on the day to day and I think that's being familiar with something helps, right?
Yeah.
But do you have to be mindful of that with the youth, the higher elevation, or
They're
is it-
adapted.
Yeah, I think like for me, when I moved out there, I was in my 20s, and I remember feeling it real hard when I moved. Like we were moving in second level,
Oh.
right? And I remember my parents helping me, and we were all like, "We can't breathe." And Idaho's it's not sea level. I mean, it's not like we came from Texas
Right.
up, but it was a big deal. In that first few weeks, that's where I remember it the most. But I think kids, they tend to, and they're acclimated to it. I haven't seen any issues with the kiddos.
You know, you talked about moving from Idaho to Parker, and you've been there 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there were moments that you thought about leaving for sure, but
Mhm.
what has kept you? What has made you say no? What we're doing here, what I'm doing here is just as good or just as good an opportunity as going.
Yeah, that's a great question because I think about it often. You know, my family's still back in Idaho.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they got
It's-
jobs there.
They have
Idaho's
jobs.
got
They
jobs,
do.
okay.
They
They
do
got a
have
jobs
jobs
board,
there.
rec facilities. They sometimes
have-
manage. Okay.
There's a few things. Like for me, I haven't really explored trying to leave the parks and rec industry. So I think,
Yeah.
do I have a skill set that could translate private sector? Maybe, but I've never really explored it to think about what could I do. Parks and rec in Idaho, there's just not as many jobs, and I think the pay is a lot less.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of looking at the opportunities that I'd have for the family, that I'd have for the kids. And I mean, right now, Denver, I always wanted to live in Denver area. And so it's nice to be able to, like, if we want to go to a game, we can pick up one of 5 professional sports teams. We can go to a concert. We can go to a festival. We can do a lot more. But it's a trade-off for like that closeness to family. Those smaller towns, like there is something really wholesome about being back in Idaho. And my parents live outside of Yellowstone.
Oh wow.
So when we go back, it's like, that is
Okay.
just the playground, right? We're up in Montana. We're out by Old Faithful. If I could find a job where I could live in their basement and just work from the basement and go to Yellowstone regularly, that would be the ideal job. I don't know what it is because remote work's not my favorite, but
That's
that's
a virtual park
A virtual
ranger for Yellowstone.
There you
Park.
go.
that piece has kept me here for a long time. But then we built a family and friends
Sure.
and connection, and I've stayed with Parker for 17 years through good, bad, ugly. You know, it tells you something about the emotional tie I have to that town.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes for me because it's so affluent, and I got into rec to make sure that sports and activities were accessible to the community. And so I really get a lot of that feel from Capra. I get to go, I've gone to DC, I've gone to Columbus, and seen cities where they really are kind of serving that very, very base need for people. And so it kind of fills that cup for me as well. But it's just been, it's been a good career out
Denver
there.
people love Denver. And
Yeah.
you know that because they decide to fly out of the worst airport in America. That is absolutely
It's always under construction.
the worst area. Y'all, I feel like y'all design it to be bad. You don't want other people to come visit. You're
That's what I thought about this morning at
You've
4
got people,
a.m.
the Illuminati are there, and
Oh,
everything
that's
else, and
right.
Indian burial grounds, and all the things like.
The terminal.
You gotta love that town to fly in and out of that airport as much as y'all do.
Just me. Oh, our Brian Beamish was the guy who did our leadership training. He's like, I purposely fly into Colorado Springs.
Yes.
I'm like, that's a lot more expensive to fly to the Springs. He's like, yep,
Yeah.
I will do it every time.
Have y'all ever really flown in and out of
I
Denver?
flew in once, but I didn't.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was an
recall a bad
experience.
Yeah, it is.
It was an experience of an
My
airport
mom and
for sure.
stepdad used to live there, so for a
Okay.
while we flew in and out every summer. And
Yeah.
I have flown to Portland and Seattle, and I've done a lot of NRPAs over the years and flown into a lot of different places. Even though I hate to fly, it's by far the worst airport I've ever been in.
It was a struggle to move around. It was not Dallas that we were talking about earlier with the donuts. It was Denver, and it was Voodoo.
Voodoo donuts.
There's a
Yeah.
Voodoo donut up
Yes.
in the 8th floor of the
Yeah.
Denver airport. I mean, that thing's huge too. It's a
It is a
massive
big
airport.
airport. Yeah. I was like, I could walk to the Seagate, but you have to go through the A, B. I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'll go sit in the South security line. And then I regretted that choice quickly. Like it just
Yeah.
is a big
like
air.
you're in a
They
subway.
have a new system that's like a really fast check-in. They have these like light up low bins and they pop up out of the little side, the little walkway thing. I don't know. It was crazy. We did that when we flew to New York earlier this summer, but they're making improvements, but always.
That's what they say.
Always. So
I
if
think
you
it's.
go,
I
it's
think it's.
always under construction.
It's a way that y'all limit your population. You're like, Denver's awesome, but if they had to fly in, maybe there's a 50-50 chance
Yeah.
they decide not
They'll
to
choose
move
not
there.
to.
Yeah,
No, that population doesn't seem to be shrinking
Yeah.
quickly.
no.
No, it's that and it's the two states. I'm like, don't go to Idaho. It's terrible, and don't go to Colorado. I like my mountains a lot, but I like them a lot better when there are less people in them.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
So you talked about you talked earlier about the what is the session the
the
P
P
word.
P word. Okay,
Not parking.
let's go
Policy.
back to that. You also just mentioned that what would be a good virtual job for you, where you could be in your in the Idaho basement,
Yes.
right near Yellowstone. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's
QR
the session. So
code coordinator
just-
or something.
you just mentioned, I'm sorry, Jay mentioned that you did a leadership session, correct?
Mhm.
Virtually through NRPA.
Yeah, I did. Hillary and I
Can you talk
presented
to
that
that?
last year. Yeah, we talked about
And Hillary for the
Hillary Romersberger
Yeah.
from
Esther and
Apex,
Becca. Yeah,
for Esther and
Yeah.
Becca.
the two listeners,
yeah,
and the water guy in the back.
that's right. Dan.
We did. We've done that presentation a couple times actually. We started at CPRA, and then she ditched me and took it to Arizona, and I think she still owes me royalties for it.
Yeah,
We'll make sure.
So
she
I
does
hope
that.
she's
right.
listening to this,
That's right.
Hillary. We did it at NRPA last year, and then we did it virtually, which was my first virtual experience. That is a trip.
It is. Nope.
That one was about, she came up in the fitness industry and I came up in the sports industry. And then we both kind of came to a position where we oversee multiple divisions that were not, like fitness really isn't my jam. So I have a staff of really fantastic coordinators and trainers that I rely on them. And I kind of guide them through just like, okay, how do we communicate this to your staff? Yes, this happened, but is this the way that we want to say it to the team? Is this program, like you handle all the scientific pieces of the program, but how do we help you get this marketed and out to the public in a way they can understand all this sciencey stuff you just said? And that's literally what our conversations look like. Sciencey stuff, and I don't know. But that was really about that. Like, what were the tools? What were the steps? It was the volunteering, the networking, the kind of getting outside of your comfort zone, speaking, just the different ways that we got involved. Her and I were both very involved in CPRA. We both are volunteers for Capra. We both have spoken at different conferences and stuff. So it was really about just the different ways you can kind of get out of what you're doing. I mean, like I said, I was in sports for 10-ish years, and that was how I kind of balanced what I was doing. Started on the CARA board and learned how to balance a budget that was not in my realm at the time as a coordinator. We didn't do budgets as much. Our supervisors did. So just really taking the opportunities where you can get them to advance your career, but just advance your own experiences. And then you find out what you like and don't like. And I apparently really like policy. I get drawn to Capra. I do well in Capra settings. I had at Columbus, he's like, you're really great at policy compliance. I'm like, I never thought of that. I just know how to, this is what this says, this is what you did, and they do or don't match. It's pretty easy.
Well, I think what's really neat about that setup with Hillary is there is no like path you have to take. You can come from any background. and have a variety of different tools to get you to where you want to be in your career. And it's all going to help no matter which path you want to go down. And, anyone can come from different areas and end up in a management role or a leadership role or director role, and just depending on whatever path you can take to get there.
Yeah. You can't do it all. You can't be good at it all.
Yeah.
We're working genius nuts, and, if work's a 6-letter job and you're good at 2 of them, you have to have support.
Yes.
And even if you perform each of those tasks at a high level, and maybe you can even be one of the best galvanizers in the industry. If galvanizing isn't something that's your joy, you're going to burn out. So not only can you not do it for a long period of time, you shouldn't, right? And if you're taking on a task and you have someone that's a galvanizer, you're actually preventing them from shining and actually doing the things they enjoy doing as well. So
yeah, that was the training. The leadership training we just took was founded on the Strength Finders, Gallup Strength Finders.
Okay.
And a lot of that same philosophy, right? We've got 34 strengths. Top 10 are your top 10 talents. The bottom 10 are your non-talents.
Yeah.
And if you're stuck in a job where you're pulling from those 10 lowest non-talents, you're likely to burn out and not want to do it.
Yeah, you're not going to want to be there for very long.
And then you want to get your team filled with people with different talents. Like you said, I think that's probably the hardest thing that I've found in like sports, for example. Hiring a sport coordinator who can do the customer service, who can do the innovation, the creativity, and do the attention to detail that it takes to make all of the pieces work is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's that they're just opposite sides of kind of the talent spectrum to have that different personality, and it is tough. And so it wears on them after a while.
Sure. No, I would imagine so. I would think, as someone who will self-proclaim he's creative, like I live in the creative side, the detail end of it is tough for me. I have my wife is detail oriented, which is great. So I can throw things out at the house and she can help me figure out ways. And I've got guys in our little community that if I had an idea and it gets downstream and someone else figures out how to, build it or whatever, awesome. But if I had to do it all, it either wouldn't get built or it wouldn't get built well. It wouldn't be to use the downstream, it wouldn't be a ship anyone could get from point A to point B very well, Well,
that's good you recognize that too, because I think a lot of people do feel like you have to do it all.
Yeah.
And they don't want to ask for help. Asking for help is weakness. And it's just not, there is no person who can do it all, whether it's at home, at work, whatever. Asking for help, it's a hard thing to do. I had to learn that at an older age than I think I expected, because it was just the way life happened. I had no choice but to say, okay, I got to go out and find people who can help me with this, with the kids, with the house, with the work, with any of it. And you find people want to do that though. Like they want to help. Like you said, it kind of robs them of being able to do their talent, but you also rob people of the ability to help. Like when they see you struggling or they know I have something that can contribute to this ship. If you don't let them, you take an opportunity away from them as well.
I think we all think of someone who's an entrepreneur, and you've known them at some point in your career, whether, your wife's doing the vinyl and vinyl thing, or my wife was doing something. Did I say it wrong?
Yeah.
Not even close. I didn't want to give her any royalties. But we know everyone that's an entrepreneur, and what is always fascinating about them, that person that and the process they're going through, is when they're the only person doing all the tasks, you can always see the burden. And then when they're able to get someone else, whether you step in or someone else steps in and helps, you immediately see a burden lifted. And they still get to do whatever joys brought them to this concept to begin with. The burden's lifted because they're able to get someone else to do something that they're not great at. Like my daughter's a photographer and she loves doing photography work. And if you could just be a professional photographer and you could just show up and take photos of people and you didn't have to book them and bill them and plan any of the things, she'd probably, find that quite gratifying. But the first couple years where she had to do all the bookings and she had to book her hotel flight or her flights in her hotel to get to the spot for the wedding, once she's at the wedding, she's brilliant. But the times before and after are very frustrating for her. And so finding a friend who loved those things, doesn't mind booking your hotel and your flight and making sure you're where you need to be, has alleviated a lot of stress on her and her business. And what's funny is we think you're making that person do something you don't want to do. Right. That's your quote unquote yum, or your yuck. That's their yum. They like that. They actually, want to do that thing. It's not the burden for you, for them. My daughter's friend doesn't mind at all booking
Right.
flights, but it's the most painful thing for my daughter to go through. So she thinks no one else would want to do it,
Right.
And so really rounding out your team
Mm-hmm.
or your company or your agency with people that have skill sets across the spectrum is the absolute best thing you can do in leadership.
Well, and recognizing their talents is, that's what we talked a lot through too, is how do you recognize them? Like when you get your own self report back, there's a lot of self-reflection. A lot of mine made sense. I was like, yep, this makes sense. Yep. These things, they line up. Seeing that in other people is harder. And that's kind of what these trainings have done too, is like that part about recognizing what you need on a team and who can bring that to your team.
I did the Working Genius presentation with our friend John Stutzman and Nicole Gorman when I was in Minnesota a couple weeks ago. And one of the things I was telling that group of people was Working Genius for me made a lot of sense, put a lot of things in perspective. I was like, oh, I get that. But it also just gave me permission to be myself in the workflow process. And that was as big of a relief in leadership as anything, because there would be times that I was like, why am I the way I am? Why did I think this way?
Yeah.
And now
I question that.
Right, for sure. Yeah. It doesn't give you permission to not do the things that are not in your skill set. You still have to participate. You still have to show up every day. You still have to show up, not just in the creative moments, but in the more detail-oriented times. I still have to do those times. But I was like, I was judging myself saying, I'm not like so-and-so because they love doing that. And I hate doing that. But what you find out is they don't actually like to do what you're wanting to do too. And so it's a grace that you get to give yourself when you go through the 16 personalities, the Myers-Briggs, the Strength Finders, the DISC or the color, whatever that is.
I like the DISC assessment.
I like this.
It really gives you a grace to say, oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am who I am. It doesn't make me bad at doing something else. It just makes me really good at doing this thing, and I need help from someone really good at doing the other thing.
And I need to hone these skills or sharpen them or make them, softer.
Yeah. As a manager, it's the opposite too, right? You can try to focus on people's strengths or whatever it is to put them in better position to succeed and not necessarily burn out and feel that they're at a position that we've had the conversation before where they're walking or getting out of their car and saying, I don't want to go in today.
Yeah.
Right? We can try to help people by knowing a little bit about
I think
them.
what it also did that was interesting is without something, once again, DISC, color, Working Genius, 16 personality, Strength Finders, whatever, Gallup, whatever it is, without something, it doesn't give you the perspective to realize that you're attracted to the people that are like you.
Right.
And so without it, you think, oh, I'm a creative, so I want other creatives in the room. But really you don't. Because if you become an agency that are all WIs and all creative, we're going to have a lot of fun in our brainstorming sessions.
And
we're not going to be able to get anything done. Right. And then our frustration will come out. We'll be like, wow, we had the best ideas of any agency I know of, and we can't execute on any of them. And so, but without that, I think you're naturally attracted to people that are like you, that think like you, that when you say something like, yeah, no, I think that same way, like, oh, cool, that we can be friends, like we can talk.
Yeah.
There's this spot that we agree on. But in leadership, you don't want that. You want someone that disagrees with you, that doesn't see it the way you see it.
It takes a lot of self-reflection and not pride, but like just being kind of secure in either your organization or just who you are as a coordinator or leader, whatever position you're in, knowing that you're doing the best you can every day.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Like we talk a lot about courageous conversation and having to have that. And I think after COVID, we saw that that got pushed more and more. We had to have hard conversations. And then we had the same issues everyone else with the Great Recession, right? Or resignation.
Yeah. Quiet quitting and all.
Quiet quitting, all of that. And so we had a third of our rec staff do just outside of rec, most of them, and had to figure out like, how do we rebuild with a lot of veteran staff gone? And it meant a lot of tough conversations to just say, okay, well, we're kind of starting fresh again. We need to, and this is where a lot of our policies and stuff came from that wasn't written down. We had to figure out how do you get that together in a way that's authentic to who Parker is. And we all saw that differently. We all came at it from different walks. And it had some growing pains, but it takes a lot of, I think, dedication to yourself and to your team to say, I'm willing to hear you and I'm willing to admit that maybe my way is not right, or maybe it is right, but it's not right for this moment. It's not right for this town or whatever. And we talked a lot about progress over perfection, right? Perfect gets in the way of progress. You do a little better every day. And you're going to have days where it's tough, and it is hard to give yourself that grace and say, I don't love numbers anymore. I could, I can do it. If you sit me down and I have to focus on that $2 million budget, I can, and I will, and I'll do it well, but it'll take a lot of my time and energy, and I will be exhausted after. I would much rather talk to an angry customer about why their little kid isn't getting enough playing time as goalie.
Yeah.
Happy to have that conversation. You can go balance the budget.
Which is a needed
right.
task. So that's important. So I'm going to transition a little bit to the fun part of our little round robin, is what we call it every week.
But the rest of our show's not fun.
It's a little more deeper sometimes. So this is where we're going to be fun.
You know, these people crying on shows. I was like, okay, well,
this is therapy.
I'm a big crier.
No crying today. Hopefully, Shane might make me cry sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so we're going to ask you some questions, maybe to get to know you a little bit better outside of work.
Okay.
And I'm going to put you on the spot because you said something earlier that you may not be able to answer this one, but I already had it all typed up. But if you were not in Park and Rec, what would you be doing right now for a profession?
I probably would have been a lawyer. I really like being right. I know I just said that you cannot be right. I'm still growing. Remember? Right. But I think a lawyer would have probably been in my wheelhouse.
What type of law?
Man, I sat on jury duty once, and it was my favorite thing I've ever done. You get to ask the judge questions that he gets to decide if the witness gets to answer. And I was like firing off questions. I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Were you looking at the guilty verdict, like,
no,
Adam, and you're going down?
We were in it was a misdemeanor, and it was the best 2 days of my life.
You're trying to up it to a murder charge?
Yeah, from misdemeanor disorderly conduct.
Didn't kill somebody. So we want to be here.
It would either be or a lifetime juror. That was it was so much
professional juror.
Professional juror.
Interesting, because so many people get called for jury duty and like, no, I don't want to go to jury duty.
I would volunteer.
In the defense of jury duty, or those who are against it, there are different types. It's so
you don't know.
You do by the name. So there's regular jury, there's trial jury, there's grand jury. So I did grand jury, 2 weeks of sitting up. It is the worst experience ever. All you do is all you hear is depositions. No, it's just deposition after deposition. So they just come in and it's a case before it goes to trial.
Yeah.
It's awful. You hear facts in almost 99% of the time. They tell you this beforehand. It's going to trial. But it's a civic duty that they have 28 people sitting in a room.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I didn't do my civic duty very well. I had my laptop open. There was a lot of emails being answered during that time. Anyhow, my question is, I loved most of the times that I umpired, and you did some reffing and umpiring. Can you give us one fun story? It could be a crazy parent, kid, anything.
Oh man, I have a handful.
It's always stories.
But so I reffed or umpired as like a 16-year-old teenager. We didn't wear shoes. We wanted to get tan lines. We didn't wear our face masks because they were ugly. And so my best friend and I did it. She was down on one field, I was down on the other, and we were reffing or umpiring 10-year-old girls. And this is right when fast pitch had come out. So nobody was really pitching fast. They were basically lobbing it in. So we didn't wear our face masks. And I took a foul tip right to my nose, shattered it. It immediately started bleeding everywhere. I had to have some poor kid's mom brought me his sweatshirt and was like, she's bleeding. She's crying. And I'm like, no, my tear ducts are just broken. And so Jenny had to come down and get my mom. And they had to pay me workers' comp for that. And after that, it was mandatory to wear.
You love policy, and you just changed the policy forever.
Sure did. That's probably, and then I had to wear my nose brace the rest of the summer. So tan lines were at that point the least of my concern. Also, I'm a redhead. I'm not sure at 16 what I was thinking, but
trying to connect those freckles.
That's right. Yes, that's what I've said. I could get all of these, and I'd have a real nice tan. Yeah.
That reminded me. If I didn't answer our first question that Jay asked about what thought I have when I think of all three of us, it probably could have been Tom on the skateboard.
Oh, that would have been good.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, Jay wasn't there though, so I don't know.
But he's enjoyed the story for years.
Everybody enjoys the story. Still got some scars.
So Parker.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't feel like you're leaving anytime soon after 17 years. So if there were 2 or 3 things that you think y'all should be shooting for or maybe reaching for as an agency, whether it's adding another facility or changing the park system some way or doing it, what would it be?
Right now, we are in progress of expanding our big regional park to an even larger regional park and adding 4 ball fields. So it's kind of a cheat answer because we're doing that. We're already doing that, but it's been a project that we've heard about for years. We could use a more southern rec center for sure. I think there's some other things. Those are 2 big ones. And maybe the rec department taking on more special events. Like we have an event department that's separate from Parks and Rec in the town. But that's what I like doing though. So yes. Yeah. Well, we have the Downtown Business Alliance in Parker. So not downtown Denver. Downtown Parker has some of their own kind of kitschy little stuff. They had a Gilmore Girls Day the other day. They were like, we're our own little Star Hollow. But that's because I like doing events and stuff. So that's kind of where my passion is like, what else big could we add? But the biggest need is that we need another facility and we need this park built. It's going to open up some really cool opportunities.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun project. Probably the most fun I've had in a long time because not being in facilities, I didn't get to sit in on some of those facility conversations about what's needed. And they would bring in programmers occasionally, but I just wasn't at a place in my career where I was in that position. And now I am. And it's been a lot of fun to sit on and talk to the architects. We had a whole turf demonstration showcase. Sounds like a real boring way to spend a day, but I was fascinated. 4 hours of turf talk.
Look at you.
I'll be out here looking at some of the, what was it, Brockville, whatever it is. I learned so much. It was great.
Errin would be a day you couldn't board. I mean,
oh my God, that's so true.
4-hour turf talk, you can take her anywhere and she's going to be all in.
I was going to say something earlier because we were talking about Colorado being a great state. Colorado is a state of really fun people too. I remember the first time that I met Errin. I don't know if you remember, this was a long time ago.
In Charlotte, I think.
It was Charlotte or Houston, one of the 2, but they were back to back, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty close to each other. Yeah. And I had met you because you had met my boss at the time. Mike, you were in we were at a social and you were with Mike Curley.
From Chile.
Chila, yes. And that's
Chile.
How I met Errin.
Yes.
And I was like, at the time, I didn't know if you had some kind of Springfield connection or something like that because all the Springfielders like to flock together. But anyway, fun fact. My question for you, though, is about Denver. What you said 5 major sports, so I'm assuming that's soccer, hockey, basketball, baseball, and football.
And okay, so 6 and 7, we have indoor and outdoor lacrosse professional teams.
Okay, so I would assume.
Well, we said major.
So I would assume, and of course, you might have baseball background, you might be a huge football fan. In your opinion, maybe top 2 fan experiences if we're going there and you had to say out of those 5 major ones
Dollar Rock Pile.
They have a rooftop now that's a ton of fun. That's a big bar on top of the Rockies course field.
I've heard a great place.
I will tell you, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady at Mile High was always a great time because they always won. And if I had known we talked so much about Tom Brady on this podcast, I might have rethought some of my decisions.
He only brings it up because of my hatred for the Patriots.
You and me both.
Well, it's more or less your love for the Bills.
I'm a big Bills. My dad's a Bills fan. He's from that side of it. That's how I knew Mike was
He's from upstate New York.
He's from upstate New York. Victor, New York.
For those of you who can't see, wait, who's from Victor?
My dad. That's where he was. So that's where we spent 2 weeks there this summer.
And for anybody who can't see us, which is everybody, because this is not being videoed,
I can see it.
Jay just put his shoe on the table
Buffalo
in front of
Bills,
us, and he's got a Buffalo Bill logo on those shoes, custom made.
Okay, the other top sport. Okay, I know we just said that lacrosse really is not a major sport.
Right.
Indoor lacrosse is one of the best times. It's inexpensive. It's like a concert or a DJ the whole time. It's like you're at a club and there just happens to be a sport at the bottom of the stadium. It's so
probably
much
why
fun.
I didn't refer to it as the major sport.
Do you know who has won back-to-back championships for indoor lacrosse?
Is it Denver?
The Buffalo Bandits.
Oh.
Okay.
Like
you didn't even let us answer.
They won the last 2 years. Okay. Like back to
I wouldn't have. I would have gone.
Got it.
I would have guessed.
You wouldn't. No, you actually said Denver.
I said Denver.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Growing up in Buffalo, we used to go to a ton of Bandits games, and it was fun. And it is just like fast paced. There's never a dull moment. You know, you want to talk about going to some sporting events. Sometimes baseball games can have some slow
minor league hockey or minor league baseball where you're always programming. Is it the same type of, or is it less? I guess the DJ.
There's just a lot of a lot of contact.
Yeah, they fight a lot.
And
there's a hot tub at the Denver.
That they're playing.
It's a
they sell
small
hot tub tickets. Like literally.
of that. No,
just jumping on tables.
It's a cold.
Yeah, we're good for that. Well, we talked a lot about Parker and Denver. Well, outside of Parker, what's your favorite Colorado city to vacation or visit?
Let's see. I was just telling my friends that I love going down to the Springs. Colorado Springs has just a ton of stuff that you can do. We did a couple staycations when I was first pregnant with my first son. And there's Garden of the Gods, and they have the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and they've got Pikes Peak.
It's really bragging right now.
Yeah,
right?
Fargo's Pizzeria. It's like
But it's worth
breweries.
it
is. Colorado's
Yeah.
I've only been once. We had the best time, and we spent 2 days in Colorado Springs. We spent 3 days in Denver. We went and did the Manitou,
Manitou,
which was
that is
insane.
impressive. You did that from non-elevation to do it. It's a pretty. I've never done it. It's on my bucket list to do it once. I have.
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but so much fun, and I would love to see Shane.
Feels like Shane would be great at it.
We can start with the Castle Rock one, and we have Reader Hess, their baby ones. Yeah.
I walked from the Omni entrance to this room, and that's the top 5 hardest things I've ever done. So I don't know if I'd want to.
I registered for conference in the registration room. You guys went on without me, and I caught you by the time. I don't think this is happening. You know, it's funny. I know now. Next time I go to Denver, I've only been once, and it was work related. Didn't have a lot of time. I know who I'm reaching out to.
Yes.
I should have reached out to you for food and all types of, because I reached out to someone else at this table and they were just too busy to give me their recommendations. You know, this guy right here. He had some kind of excuse. He was, well, I got the text.
We've got the receipt.
I know.
Right to.
Oh yeah, I could talk about all this stuff forever. And like you said, it really is hard to find something that bores me. I will find something good or enjoy
it. Flag tattoo on your shoulder or middle of your back or.
I got the skyline.
Jay asked
the skyline with
the place to go, and she mentioned an hour outside of Denver or whatever. Like, oh, favorite place? So have you ever heard of just south of Denver? Place.
Awesome. This one wraps into the Teton, so it's got my Idaho background and my.
So I do feel like there are no eyes on this. We do need to be very clear to the listeners.
What is the tattoo?
Becca and Esther, where the tattoo was, ankle area.
Yeah,
we should be.
We should have left it. We should have left it to the.
Everybody's wondering.
People are wondering for sure.
Wait, what?
I didn't know there would be a Colorado tattoo. I was being facetious.
Yep.
And
no, that's new. That's a new one.
That's great.
So, if you could imagine Colorado not existing, where else would you be interested in working?
I loved my tour of Columbus, Ohio. Like that was very surprising for me because I thought of like really industrial. It was so much more. It was green. They had just redone the riverside. They were redoing the splash park. They have such a great system. I mean, I've been to a lot of really cool agencies, and I feel like every Capra visit I've actually gone to in person, including Farmington, New Mexico, which isn't super far, and it's definitely not DC and not Columbus. Little town, little city. They take you in to see all of the highlights of the city, and I think I tend to be able to make the most of whatever I'm doing. And most places I go, I'm like, man, like Houston, I have so much fun in Houston. I was like, I could live here.
Yeah.
I don't think I could live in Dallas. That was not top 10. But in terms of like Columbus had just a neat, and it's the most recent one I did in person. So
in our PH one to Columbus.
Yes, I think I will be there.
I'm excited to just get Columbus, Philly, like just being in that area of the state is not common.
Columbus and Philly are in the same state.
Sorry, country. Area of the country. So sorry.
Even I know that.
So sorry, Shane.
That was my first introduction to the Ohio State too. Right, I was a Vandal, University of Idaho. So college football is really not our forte. We were terrible. I was there for 6 years, and we had 4 head coaches. We were awful. So when they were showing me the Ohio State, it's like a 5-mile campus. All I could think about was, how do these kids get to class? Like, football, what? But
I don't think
they don't go to class.
I don't think they have it like their own internal little city. It's huge.
Well, Errin, thank you for joining us today. This was awesome.
Yeah, this was fun.
And, as usual, we had one direction and it's kind of all over the place
Yep.
and very organic. But, for something that we do, all of us in our department from a youth sports perspective and programming, we don't always talk about youth sports. So I'm happy you went that direction and appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
It was great. Appreciate it. That was great.
That was awesome.
She was really cool.
It was something that I looked forward to because I've known Errin for a little while, but we haven't really dove into some deep conversations like we did today. And as we've seen on this show, we never know where the conversation's going. It went all over the place, which is awesome, just because of all of her experience and obviously us sharing different ideas.
And you had met her. I'd never met her.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about NRPA conference. We talk about this sometimes when we talk about what's your plan going to the conference or when the YP ends. Do you have a place to be, right? And there are so many people you might run into. So
And
we've
you
had
hear 'em.
casual
Right.
meetups,
Yeah.
where I may have said, "Hey, Errin, how's it going?" Or and then you meet that one time, and then that's kind of what it is, right? Casual passing in the hall, so to speak. Never have I had the chance to have a nice deep conversation though with Errin, and so that was.
I'd heard the name, and I knew enough to know when you announced her, who she was. But that's the really cool thing about NRPA and this podcast. Ultimately, is it's not just us talking to people we know. We get to meet new people, and there's a bunch of fascinating people that work in our industry.
There are,
and she
Great
was
guest.
funny with the Denver tattoo.
Definitely wasn't expecting
Oh.
that.
man. We
I
had
said that she started ankling her ankle up, and I was like, "Oh boy, she's
it's happening right now." We had 2 legs end up on the table in one podcast
right.
episode.
That's right.
Very Shane and myself. We didn't get to do that. I guess next time.
I guess when we get in person, you never know what's
You
going to happen.
never know.
It's crazy.
You never know. Great job, Jay.
Good job.
Awesome.
She was fun.
Thanks, guys. And I hope you enjoyed the show. And we have another one coming out soon. Take care, everybody.
See you, everyone.